Hey geniuses, I am here to talk to you about 2.7, Planning the Men We Reaped Higher Level Essay Step 1, choosing examples to answer your line of inquiry. So I made a sample and I used the ghost motif because I know a lot of you are tracing that and I figured this might be helpful to you. And I just wanted to show you how I did this, and hopefully it will help to see an example. So the first question is, what is the authorial choice you traced? What did you find interesting about it? So I'm just trying to get you to brainstorm, start thinking about what can you include, what can you focus on in this literary analysis about your authorial choice. So I wrote ghost specter motif, and this is just my personal response, why I thought it was interesting or what I found interesting about it. I said it's creepy, which I like, but also seems to get at the heart of the book since it is about 5 people who died. What line of inquiry have you investigated or plan to investigate in connection with this authorial choice, and how does it connect? Right, the complete question is the next step. Now, for this one, you are writing your own line of inquiry. You can use one of my samples if you want to, but it's really your job to ask a question that you want to investigate, that you think is interesting, that you think you can answer based on what you know about the book. You know that it's hard to do this, high level analysis the first time you're reading a book. So you've read the book, you did some analysis, evaluation, interpretation as you read, but now we kind of have to go back and really use our brain power to figure out what's really interesting here, how is it making meaning, what are these choices, and how do they impact the text. So I put a bunch of sample inquiry questions in this document, but as I was working on my own, I thought, I don't really like any of those for the ghost specter motif. So here's what I came up with. How does Ward use the ghost specter motif to make a point about understanding life after trauma? So in my line of inquiry, I have the authorial choice. And then I also have something about theme and meaning. And so you might want to take that route too. This might go under the, the central concept creativity. And really you could, I think, make any line of inquiry similar, or you could use this type of line of inquiry for any authorial choice. So how does Ward use, and then just enter your authorial choice. So this could be like a frame sentence. How does Ward use, and then type your authorial choice to make a point about, and then type a theme, meaning. So feel free to use this if you find it helpful for your line of inquiry. Then we go on to look for the 5 best examples. Now, of course, I couldn't stick with just 5, so I've got some more than that, but I forced myself to just come up with 1 for the first reading deadline. So there it is on page 14. And now I have my analysis and my evaluation. This is really the central part of this essay. This is really what is the most important. You got to slow down here and pick apart the quote word by word, looking at all of the interesting aspects of it. So here's what I came up with. Men's body litter my family history. The pain of the women they left behind pulls them from the beyond, makes them appear as ghosts. There's my example. Here's my analysis and evaluation. And I kind of go back and forth. I don't have like analysis, all of it here, evaluation, all of it here. I kind of tie them together, and you can feel free to do that too. The more you do this, the easier that will come. The ghost motif is used here explicitly. The men's bodies that litter her family history are what appear as ghosts to the women they leave behind. In fact, it is the women's pain that pulls the men back from death, really, to appear as ghosts. as if the women are reanimating the dead through their longing. If it weren't for the women, the ghosts would not exist. The men would just be dead. It's only through the women's trauma and painful memories that the men exist, but not in a positive way, rather in a haunting way that makes the reader feel the supernatural pull of loved ones lost. So I thought that was interesting about that quote, and I'm doing some work with both diction, imagery, and mood here. I haven't used those terms, and that's okay if you don't use them too. What my concern is about it when you're using the terms is sometimes you use the terms, but you don't really say anything meaningful or interesting. So I tried to say something meaningful and interesting without using the terms to show you what that looks like. Okay, so feel free to use the terms. You don't always have to. Sometimes it can, be impressive to an IB assessor if you use the terms diction, imagery, tone, structure, motif. But sometimes I think it gets in the way of you trying to make a good point. All right, so then we move on to this next one, and I've got some more. I put this link in Schoology, so if you want to keep reading it, you sure can. I'm just going to scroll through now so that I don't read all of these to you, because you can read yourselves. You can see I came up with 3 for the end. I think the end is difficult. It's hard to make sense of the endings of books, especially this one that really doesn't have a whole lot of closure to it. And so I did come up with 3 different ones. Okay. Finally, the thesis statement. I wish I would have added a little bit more in there for the thesis statement, and I plan on making a separate video about thesis statements, but just I wanted to add this too. Make sure that you include a debatable claim that has an authorial choice, your line of inquiry, and it says something about what these different choices do to the meaning of the book. All right, the 4 themes we traced, and you don't have to use one of these, but I do think each one is full of good stuff that you can find and write about and will serve you well if you see a connection. So the one that I chose is Journey to Freedom and Understanding After Trauma. And then I do have a couple sample thesis statements in here from the Frederick Douglass essays that might not be in your document, but I will have a separate video on thesis statements you can watch. So I'm not going to read through those right now. Instead, I'm going to show you my thesis statement. Ward uses the ghost motif in Men We Reaped to recreate the haunting ache of the dead men she and her community have lost, and the inexorable pull their loss has created to the other side. She recovers from this pull toward death only through imagining her own death someday as a happy reunion with her brother. That's what I came up with. I think I could write a pretty good essay on this that would be interesting, that makes a debatable claim that is all about authorial choices and talks about how the book creates meaning. So good luck to you as you write yours and watch the thesis statement video next.